Hello and welcome to the This Works For Me Virtual Summit. I'm your host, Faith Watson. I am the director of the Faculty Development Center at Murray State University. Are you looking for strategies to make your assignments more transparent to your students? Do you need ideas to provide more equitable opportunities to help your students succeed? Well, you're in the right place because our guest today, Dr. Marianne Winkelmes, will be providing you with some strategies to do so. Dr. Winkelmes, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here with you.
Me too. I'm glad to have you. And so, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Sure. So I am right now the executive director of the Center for Teaching and Learning at Brandeis University, where I've been for about the last 6 months. But I've worked at teaching and learning centers for a little over 20 years now. And I've held leadership positions at the teaching and learning centers at Harvard University, the Bach Center for Teaching and Learning, the University of Chicago, the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I've also served as a senior fellow at the Association of American Colleges and Universities. I worked as an evaluation coach for the Lilly Endowment in their higher education grants for about 10 years. I've served as an elected core committee member for the POD network in higher education, and also as an executive committee member of Nevada Humanities. And now I've come back to the East Coast, sort of where I started in teaching and learning centers, located now in Waltham at Brandeis University.
Wow, you have a wealth of experience, and I'm just so looking forward to delving into this strategy that you're going to be sharing with us today. And so the title of your strategy is Designing Transparent and Equitable Assignments to Increase Student Success. Tell us what impressed you to start using this strategy and how it has worked for you.
So to answer this question, I think first maybe I want to just touch on what do we mean by transparency. By this term, it may not be the best possible term, but it's the one that seems to have stuck in terms of how people have described it and understood it. And what we mean by that is that in addition to teaching the what, or the content of a course, we're also teaching about the why and the how. So how are students learning the material that we want them to acquire? How will they use that learning, those skills, that knowledge, later in their lives after this course or after college? And why are we manipulating their learning experiences in the ways that we choose to do? All of that should be communicated explicitly and discussed with the students, in addition to the what, or the content of the course. That's kind of what we mean by transparent. I think what impressed me to start using this in my own, I'll give you sort of a small scale example and then a large scale example. So in my own experience, my preparation, my PhD is from Harvard University in the history of Italian Renaissance art and architecture. And I began teaching both to daytime students and to nighttime students at the Harvard Extension School. And I was teaching a graduate seminar one term, and in the group of students, this seminar was about problems in Italian Renaissance studies. I think the focus was Michelangelo's career. And the students in the class included a plumber, a Dominican priest, a lounge singer, a dyslexic museum guard, a banker, and an opera company director. And I began to think really hard with these students as partners about what was the value of a graduate level course on Michelangelo's career to them. These were folks who already had established careers. They did not intend to become art historians. They didn't intend to teach art history. And we worked really hard on thinking about what were the skills and the knowledge that were valuable to them that they could be using later, in their lives after this course and in their careers. And that led to a semester of real experimentation, and we surveyed them and began to really converse about their learning experiences. We talked a lot about the how and the why in addition to the what, or the content. I think it was in that same term that I was leading a seminar for teachers in the daytime at the Harvard Bach Center for Teaching and Learning. And that was where the term transparency emerged in our conversations to describe what it was we were trying to do, to communicate with students about how they were learning and why we were choosing to manipulate and structure their learning experiences in the ways that we did. I think a larger scale context for this is the equity crisis in higher education. So according to US Department of Higher Education statistics, we know that ethnically underrepresented students, first generation to attend college in their family students, and low income students, those students collectively are often referred to as underserved students in the literature. That group of students is half as likely to graduate from college in 4 years as their white and Asian peers. And that group of students is the new incoming majority population of college students in this country. And that is a sobering realization. And we do have a kind of equity crisis because of this. More students than ever before are making it to college, but once they get there, they don't have anything like they don't experience anything like an equitable educational opportunity, right? So we have this issue with the new majority population of students being so much less likely to graduate college in 4 years as some of our prior and white and Asian students. We also have a situation where a kind of gatekeeper approach to teaching, which is an approach that many faculty who are now teaching might have experienced themselves as students. It's an approach that tends to sound something like this. It's my job to teach you the material, and it's your job to figure out how to learn it. And if you can't figure out how to learn it, then you should leave, right? It's a way of weeding out differently prepared or less prepared students, or students who are prepared in ways that are other than what that professor's ideal preparation might look like for their students. That kind of an approach is not just, it's not equitable, it's not fair, and it's not sustainable for the new incoming majority population of college students. That gatekeeper mentality is also terrible for research productivity, even though that's often a defense for it, right? To sort of preserve the better students for research productivity or something. Because we know from researchers like Malcolm Gladwell, for example, that it's the outlier thinkers, those thinkers who are differently prepared, who come at a tricky research question from a new angle or from across disciplines. Those are the kinds of thinkers who tend to catalyze research breakthroughs. And if we weed out that vast diversity of thinkers at the entry level in college, then we're only producing thinkers who think like the researchers who are stuck at the top of the research pyramid in those sticky research problems. So this kind of gatekeeper approach is really terrible for higher education, both in terms of being socially unjust and unfair and inequitable, and in terms of being terrible at stunting research. It really does stunt research productivity. And I think another reason that we have this equity crisis in higher education is that the strategies that help students succeed in high school don't work as well at the college level. So students who do well in high school tend to do well at an introductory level across all disciplines. And the strategies that they learn for that are effective at an introductory level. But once those students reach college, we're working inside of specific disciplines where there are methodologies and approaches that are particular to a discipline, technologies and tools and ways of thinking. And the high school preparation that works at the introductory level across disciplines does not work so well when we're asking these students to ascend from the level of a novice thinker to being more of an expert thinker inside a discipline. So these are some of the reasons why we have this equity crisis in higher education. And it was that equity crisis that was sort of the foundational problem, I would say, for why we took this transparency in learning and teaching project national.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about how this works and how do you know that it really works?
So the approach that we used, and why don't I describe for you two different studies.
Okay.
The first was a national study that we undertook with the Association of American Colleges and Universities.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funded by TG Philanthropy, and my co-investigators were Tia Brown McNair and Ashley Finley. And in this project, we chose a group of 7 minority-serving institutions that were really varied. There was a historically Black college and university, an institution that was on Native American land. We had Asian American and Native American serving. We had Hispanic serving institutions. We had institutions that ranged in size from very small to very large. Mm-hmm. Some were primarily residential and some were primarily non-residential. Some were urban, some were rural, and they were geographically dispersed. There were 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, and a research university in the mix. And the reason we selected this group is we wanted for anyone looking at our results to see that the results applied to students who in some way were similar to the students they have, right? We really wanted a representative sampling. Mm-hmm. And so we worked with a group of around 1,800 students and 35 faculty. All of those faculty were teaching 2 sections of the same course. And the intervention was this. We asked them, in one of those 2 sections of your course, please teach all the assignments the same way you ever have. And in the other section of your course, please pull out 2 assignments, just 2, and tweak them a bit to make them more relevant, more accessible, more problem-centered in the real world, more transparent for students. And I'll tell you in a moment what that intervention kind of looks like. But the reason we went for just 2 assignments is we honestly wanted to see how little could you change and still have a substantial impact on students' success. And so the intervention that we asked these faculty to use was this. On those 2 assignments, before the students start doing any of the work on the assignments, we asked for the teachers and students to communicate together about 3 aspects of the work on those assignments. First, the purpose. The purpose had 2 parts to it. What skills will the student practice by doing this assignment? And what knowledge will the student gain from doing this assignment? And when I say assignment, in this case, we worked with take-home assignments, but this works equally well when the assignment is a small in-class activity, or when the assignment is a group of colleagues in a team working on a project, right? There are many uses for this TILT framework that I could describe for you. But in this first study, the faculty talked about the purposes, the skills and knowledge. And then the second thing we wanted for faculty and students to talk about together was the task. What steps should students follow and what steps should they avoid, right? How to do the work. At this phase, we had some pushback and some resistance from some of the faculty in the original study because they were concerned that giving students all the steps might make the work too easy or might limit the students' creativity to come up with a new approach. And so we asked those teachers to use a purpose statement that sounded something like this. The purpose of this assignment is for you to struggle and feel confused while you invent your own approach to addressing the question or the problem. And that might sound a little funny at first, but in fact, we think that that's what helped to preserve the students' sense of confidence and their sense of belonging. Because when the student would feel very lost, that's exactly the moment when they would recognize, okay, if I feel really lost right now, it's not my fault. There's not something wrong with me. I'm exactly where I should be. I'm right on track. I'm supposed to feel lost right now because clarity comes later. Right? And then, so there's one more thing that we asked the teachers and students to communicate about before they did those 2 assignments. So the first thing was the purpose, the skills and knowledge. The second thing was the task. And the third thing, that was criteria for the students' upcoming work. And this meant much more than just a checklist or a rubric, because you don't know for sure that the words on a checklist or the words in a rubric mean the same thing to the students who haven't done work in this discipline, that they mean the same thing to the students as they do to the professor. So in addition to the checklist or a rubric that a professor would offer, we suggested that the faculty bring several examples of real-world work in the discipline. Bring those examples into class so the students and faculty could discuss them together before the students did the work. So this could mean anything like, for a journalism course, a paragraph out of a newspaper, or in any discipline really, a paragraph out of a disciplinary journal. For an arts or performing arts course, maybe a snippet of a movie or a play performance. For an engineering course, we could bring photographs of a local construction project, just examples of real-world work in the discipline that students can then look at and apply the criteria for their upcoming work to these examples. This is really the only way that students own the criteria and understand what they mean, what those words on a checklist or on a rubric mean. And it's the only way for a faculty member really to know that all students after this conversation have reached the same starting point of understanding about their upcoming work before they start doing the work. It's an equitable way of structuring an assignment so that all students have an equitable opportunity to succeed in the work.
Wow.
So let's see. So how about what happened? Do you want to? I'll tell you what happened, because part of what you asked me earlier, it was a big question, and it was, how do you know it works? So you know what the intervention looked like: purpose, task, and criteria. Communications about that before students start doing the work on just 2 assignments in this case. So how do we know that it worked? Well, for the students who reported receiving more transparent instruction in their course, those students had, at the end of the term on a survey that we created for this purpose, they reported that they had a higher sense of academic competence, a higher sense of belonging in college, and they had a greater metacognitive awareness of the skills that they were practicing and developing while they did the work in the course. And the skills that we looked at were skills that employers often ask for. They're skills that are often pieces of most institutions' desired learning outcomes, things like analysis and synthesis skills, critical thinking skills, collaboration with others, evaluating and judging, right? Those kinds of questions, those kinds of skill sets. So the interesting thing about that result is that those things where our students reported a greater, sense of confidence, sense of belonging, and then metacognitive awareness of skills, those are 3 factors that other researchers like Walton and Cohn in their 2011 Science Magazine article, or Hausman and Yang, other researchers have identified those as predictors of success. They've showed us that when confidence and a sense of belonging and metacognitive awareness increases, then also grades are higher and persistence by students is longer. And so just by making this small adjustment of purpose, task, and criteria to 2 assignments, we had created the conditions of these predictors of success. And then we did a second study because we wanted to see how long would that benefit last, right? So other researchers have suggested that this can last for a term or even up to a year. And we wanted to look at, could we push the effect longer? Just how long might it last? And so we looked at a group of students at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. It's where I happened to be working at the time, but it was also rated by US News and World Reports as the most diverse student population in the country, which means in our case at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, the institution, I would say about 2/3 to 3/4 of the incoming first-year class is that underserved population of some combination of first generation in their family to attend college, low income, and ethnically underrepresented. And in addition, those students were coming largely from one of the poorest performing public high school systems in the nation. The state of Nevada, I think, was ranked about 48th or 49th that particular year when we did this study in 2015, 2016. So we looked at the entering class. We looked at thousands of students in that entering class, around 3,000 students, and we did we took a look at we ran the same survey that we did with the Association of American Colleges and Universities study. And I should mention that in that first study, we also did a baseline equivalence test. So we knew at the beginning of that experiment that there were no students who were more likely to be confident or aware of their skill development at the beginning of the term, right? We needed to make sure that in both groups of students, the ones who reported receiving transparent instruction and the ones who reported not receiving it, that they were all sort of at a baseline similarity before we ran the test. And then what we discovered with the University of Nevada, Las Vegas students is that the benefits for students' retention lasted at least into the third year of college, right? So we had a retention rate difference of about 15% in the second year, and then around 13% difference in retention rates in the third year between those students who reported receiving transparent instruction and those who didn't. And I should say these results are all statistically significant. In the instance of the UNLV study, when we looked at particular skill sets, we're looking at a magnitude of effect that's really large in size between those students who reported receiving transparent instruction and those who didn't on individual skill sets that we asked them about. Similarly, with the AAC&U national study, the results were statistically significant for all students, and the benefits were even greater for underserved students. And that was a really exciting finding in that first study too, that this is a strategy that's good for everyone, and it's extra good for those who are underserved. So it levels the playing field of opportunity for all students to succeed. So that's sort of how we know that it works. We really undertook a lot of research to get to the place where we can say, okay, according to a national study, there are statistically significant benefits for all students with greater benefits for underserved students. Mm-hmm. And according to a large study of underserved students in the Southwest, this also benefits retention for at least 2 years. And we're still tracking how long. We'll go to the third year and the fourth year. And all of this work, we sort of did this research in order to demonstrate convincingly that this is worth trying. Mm-hmm. This is a small change to teaching that has a big impact on student success, and that impact is significant for everyone and even greater for underserved students.
Wow. May I ask you this? I'm curious to know about the faculty experience in this TILT experience, because I know you have shared a lot about the students and the impact from their perspective. I know you had mentioned earlier that, for example, one way in which the faculty was resisting in terms of making the assignment too explicit, you told them, okay, well, let's introduce this in the purpose statement. What other feedback did you get from faculty in this process?
So that's a really great question. And I think that we now could be doing research on the faculty, right? We could be doing some kind of surveys of the faculty. But what we have right now are publications by the faculty who were involved in those studies, both of those studies. The Association of American Colleges and Universities project, we published both the research findings, and each one of those 7 schools had a team of 5 or 6 faculty, and each one of those faculty teams wrote a piece that was published in the spring 2016 issue of one of the AACNU's journals called Peer Review. And so you can read what those faculty say about the experience, and you can also read publications by faculty from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and elsewhere at this point about the impact that this has had on them. And these are all available on the tilthighered.com website in our publications section. But I can sort of summarize and generalize that many of these faculty are noticing that, well, it took a little more effort for them to design a particular assignment or class activity. What they notice is that the quality of the students' work is higher. They think that's because students are spending the majority of their time doing the work and much less of their time than before figuring out how to do the work, right?
Wow.
Except in those cases when the purpose is to figure out a way to do the work, right? We also know from the faculty that students came to them, far fewer students came to them with questions right before assignments were due, because everybody knew that everybody was clear on what the expectation was and how to do the work and what success would look like in multiple different ways. So there was less kind of panic and need for last minute assistance before. There was far less arguing about grades later. And at this point, the faculty from the original study are now, we asked them to do this to 2 assignments, and then that had a bit of a domino effect. So most of those faculty went on to design more assignments in this way over time. So 2 was enough for them to see a significant, substantial difference. And now, they'll go on and do more assignments that way. Some folks have even designed their whole syllabi in this way. And some have even applied this to the design of a curriculum in a department, for example, or to the way that multiple offices at an institution might work together to provide faculty development, right? This framework has many uses. Some are even using it to hire work study students. And they'll have a purpose task criteria to describe what the job is about and what the student would gain in terms of learning from doing a work study job. So I feel like I need you to guide me back onto the track of what question we were answering at that point.
Well, I think you're doing an excellent job of really telling me the response of the faculty to this tilt approach, because I'm also wondering if somebody is interested in really starting to use this approach, but they're a little bit hesitant. What would be some first step or advice that you'd give to such a faculty?
Well, you're lucky to be starting at this point, because from our initial studies, one of the discoveries we made that wasn't like a statistically significant reported result, but it was learning for us, is that no matter how perfectly transparent you think your assignment is, or your instructions for an in-class activity are, you can't be sure that your assignment is transparent to the students who are doing it. You can't be sure that it's transparent for the next group of students if it was transparent for the last group of students, because they're different people. And so what we developed to help the teachers work around this was a student's version of the purpose task criteria framework. And we now encourage all faculty to, spend a little time trying to design an assignment that is very transparent and relevant and accessible. But then give that assignment to the students along with this purpose task criteria template written from the student's perspective. and ask the students to parse the assignment for you. And then they can tell you what remains not transparent to them. And they give you the opportunity in real time to make any kind of adjustments or revisions or corrections so that they really can start off at the same starting line of understanding before they begin doing the work. And some of our faculty have found that it takes less time then to design assignments because they make an effort to clarify purposes, tasks, and criteria, but then they ask the students to fill in the rest, and the assignment can be revised together in that way. This is also a good way to help students own the criteria, to help students own the transparent framework, right? Because it's one thing for a teacher to bring in multiple examples and then show the students what, why those examples are good. It's one thing for a teacher to lecture to students about the purposes, tasks, and criteria of an assignment, but some of that might be information overload for students. And in fact, some of our faculty in the original study really were concerned about that, giving them too many details, and it's just too much to absorb. So when we developed this framework for the students to find the purposes, tasks, and criteria in the prompt for the assignment before they did the work, that then makes the students start practicing that metacognitive awareness of what they'll learn and what skills they'll gain ahead of time, right? It prepares them to be more metacognitive, in addition to saving some time for the faculty member. So I would absolutely suggest to anyone who's trying this out for the first time to go to our tilthighered.com website, certainly, and download the template for teachers, and then also download the template for students. And I would say the good news is that the assignments that our first sets of faculty did in those first 2 research studies, first of all, they only did 2 of them, right? So a small amount of change, a tilt, if you will, transparency in learning and teaching, tilt is the a small tilt can have significant results. You don't have to change all your assignments the first time through, just pick out 1 or 2. And then certainly there are more resources on the Tilt Higher Ed website too, like assignments that across the disciplines. We have sample assignments from before and after they were revised to make them more transparent. So those might be helpful to you as well.
Yeah, those are
students. That's the key.
Yeah. Thanks for even mentioning those resources as well. And viewers, I will be linking to those resources in the video description below. And I know you had mentioned earlier the AAC journal. Is that on the website as well?
So the AACNU, Association of American Colleges and Universities, that their peer review article from 2016, that's also listed in the publications section on the tilthighered.com website. If you click on examples and resources, then you'll get to the publications section.
Excellent.
And I would also mention that on that website, you'll find short videos by me with images that show you the charts and graphs and statistical significance measures and effect size measures and p-values. And so there was short videos, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, that describe those research results. And there are lots of slides that you could use and handouts. I'd really like for faculty developers as well as faculty to borrow and share these resources with citation, of course, but as much as possible, because this is a strategy that's a small change with a big and equitable impact. And you can all use this to help combat the equity crisis in higher education. And of course, our newest resource, and a very helpful one, for faculty and instructors, faculty developers, and also institutional leaders is our new book. It just came out in 2019 this year with Stylus, and it's called Transparent Design in Teaching and Leadership in Higher Education. There are 3 parts to this book. The first part focuses on teaching and learning contexts. The second one focuses on faculty developers using the TILT framework. And then the third and final section of the book focuses on cross-institutional contexts in which faculty and developers and leaders are using the TILT framework of purpose, task, and criteria to frame their work.
Excellent. You have shared some practical strategies with us today, and we are so grateful. I'm going to be checking out these resources, and viewers, I encourage you to check them out as well. So, would you like to leave our viewers with an encouragement or a challenge?
Well, I would say I can leave them with both, which is give this a try. It just takes 2 assignments to make a big difference. And those 2 assignments don't even have to be perfect, right? They just have to be more transparent. They don't have to be perfectly transparent in order to make a difference. Teachers in our study, for example, have made their first assignments more transparent in successive years. But some transparency on 2 assignments is enough to make a difference. And this is something that you could do in a small way right now. You can make a small effort starting today or tomorrow that will have a big impact on student success, that will complement larger institutionally organized student success efforts like curricular reform or targeted scholarship money or intrusive advising. This is something you can do starting right now, a small intervention that will have a big impact on combating the equity crisis.
Well said. Dr. Winkelmes, thank you so much for taking the time to share such practical strategies with us today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Watson. I'm really glad that you gave me the opportunity to meet with you this afternoon.
You're welcome. And viewers, I encourage you to share this episode with others, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of this virtual summit. See you soon.